Okay, we did that. Now we just have to share that. There, what do you know? We made it happen. Okay, excellent. So, um, we are starting. Oh no, it went down. Um, okay, excellent. We are getting an answer to a question we have been asking for what seems like ages to start our study this morning. We learned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehoshua says, right? Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, Ad Shalosh Shaot. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Halachat Karabi Yehoshua. I think everyone gets that, but I'll go ahead in English. Rabbi Yehoshua says you can say Shema ad shalosh shaot until the third hour, until 3 hours of the day. Rabbi Yehuda says that Shmuel said, not me Shmuel, different Shmuel. I understand. We get confused a lot. The halacha is in accordance, weird language. The halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua. So you can recite Shema until the third hour of the morning.
And we said last time, third hour didn't mean 3 hours after midnight. It's 3 hours after you're getting up time.
Yes, but your standard getting up time, not like when you happen to wake up that day. Like if you wake up at noon, you can't say it till 3 p.m. because that's the third hour of your day. That's ridiculous. That's not a standard, right? It's got to be if your normal waking time, if you're a night watchman and your normal waking time or something, if you wake up at 4, you're a doctor, maybe. You have to go to the ER by 6. You wake up at 4. Say it by 7. If you are a college professor and you have to go in by 9 and you wake up at 7, say it by 10. You know what I mean? It's if you're a student and your school starts at 6 in the morning, say it by 8. You know what I mean? It's like they're trying. It's got to be adaptable, but it can't be everything, right? It can't just be nothing because then there's no rule. So Rabbi Yehoshua has this nifty thing, and so we'll say that. But of course, we also learned in the Mishnah that one who recites Shema from that time onward loses nothing. Although he does not fulfill the mitzvah of reciting Shema at its appointed time, he's nevertheless considered like one who reads the Torah and is rewarded accordingly. With regard to this ruling, Rav Chisda said that Mar Ukva said, this only applies provided one does not recite Yotzer Or, right? The blessing Yotzer Or in the morning, Yotzer Or Uvarei Choshech, say Shalom Uvarei Takol. Anyway, or the rest of the blessings recited, right? It's not just Yotzer Or you can't say, it's the rest of the Shema, right? Because the Shema isn't, they're making a distinction here. There's the Shema part that you're like super duper required, whatever. We're saying that's the main like 2 lines. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Le'olam Va'ed. And then he's like, okay, but then remember, like then there's multiple paragraphs. There's the Shema, there's the V'ahavta, then there's the paragraph that the Reform movement omits. Then there's Emet V'Emunah. Then there's then there's Michamocha. Then this is all part of the Shema Uvirchotecha, we call it the Shema and its blessings. Right. So, right, as they pertain only to the fulfillment of the mitzvah of reciting the morning Shema, after the third hour, they're inappropriate. So you can still, you still get partial credit if you were to do that, but The Gemara raises an objection to Rav Chista's statement that we just read. One who recites Shema from that time. Did we do this already? Is this? I don't know when it's just something I've read before, something we've studied before. Anyway, we'll keep going. If you remember it, you teach me, and then I'll say, great, we got it. We're ready to move on. I'll skip to the next sugya. The Gemara raises an objection, right, to Rav Chista's statement. One who recites Shema from that time onward loses nothing. This was his statement, right? And is considered like one who reads Torah, but he recites two blessings before. Okay, so there's that part's the same. One who recites Shema from that time onward loses nothing and is considered like one who reads Torah. They agree up to that point. But he recites two blessings beforehand and one thereafter. So this is different, obviously, than Rav Chista's statement, where he said basically it's the Shema Stam, just the Shema. Davka, just the Shema. And says, so the refutation of the statement of Rav Chista is a conclusive refutation. And Rav Chista's opinion is rejected of that in favor of that of the Baraita. So they're saying, okay, what are we talking about here? What do we think these blessings are? Oh, I can't pull up a side thing. That's unfortunate. Oh, there it is. Ha ha. Yes.
Okay. So they're saying Rav Hista is correct in saying you lose nothing, but Rav Hista didn't mention, and they're saying you have to say these extra blessings. Is that the?
No. Right. Rav Chista didn't include the extra blessings. Now, what's the one before? Barhu. We say the bar. Remember, we start Shema V'Yirchatecha. In fact, this is probably why I have this here from last time. I'm only pulling this out. I can't wait, y'all. I got to tell you, the books came. The Sidurim came from Israel. The Israeli Reform Sidurim. They're awesome. They're really great. I can't wait to start studying them with everybody. We're gonna be the first synagogue in North America to switch to those because this it served its purpose and it's way too big. There's way too much empty white space. Why? Why? I don't know. It's weird. We're gonna get a new book. It's better. The Israeli Reform movement figured out the middle between the traditional Sidurim and something that's reform. Okay, I need to find Shema. No, I don't actually. That's exactly the point I'm trying to say. What does it say up top here? You can see the Hebrew, if not the
And my glasses.
Shema u'virchotecha, right? So it says Shema u'virchotecha, Shema and its blessings. What's the blessing here? You probably can't see it then because it's too far. It's the Barhu, right? So even in our, like, here you go. It says it right here. So the Barhu is the one that comes before. And then after we have the V'ahavta and Michamocha. Yes, we definitely did this before. Okay. Some say that Rav Chista said, but maybe I teach something different this time. We never know. It's what Rabbi Ben Bagbag said, right? You got to turn the Torah over and over again because there's always something else inside it. So some say that Rav Chista said that Mar Ukva said the opposite. In fact, that what it is that what is the meaning of loses nothing in the Mishnah? He's going to ask. This means that one who recites Shema after the third hour does not lose the opportunity to recite the blessings and is permitted to recite them, although the time for the recitation of the Shema has passed. That was also taught in a Baraita, one who recites. This is the same one as the one that they brought to refute Rav Chista. So what are they saying is happening here? One who recites Shema after this time loses nothing and is considered like one who reads Torah, but he recites two blessings beforehand and one thereafter. It's like the one that they brought. They've got these three Baraitot. The original Rav Chista, the refutation of Rav Chisda and this altered almost refutation of Rav Chisda that they say might actually have been said by Rav Chisda.
Yeah.
If you're confused, that's okay. Believe it or not, I'm going to say something, and if you want to be like, that's silly reformy, he thinks, whatever, I might understand. The point of this at this point is not to try and say who's right. We'll get to the end of the argument, but track what the rabbis are doing, because uh, I really appreciate here that there is not just kavod Rav, not just trying to tie Rav Chisda into the tradition and save him from himself, but I really appreciate it as a narrative. So let's finish this sugya before I continue talking and ruin it. With regard to our Mishnah, are we really going to go to the next? Great. Okay, never mind. With regard to our Mishnah, this is the end of it. Rabbi Mani said, greater is one who recites Shema at its appropriate time than one who engages in Torah study. That's why I was saying, don't worry too much about the argument. A proof is cited. That's a good question. The Gemara is going to come in and say, that's kind of a flip of everything we've been talking about. The question is, how much of it do you have to say? How much can you say after the fact and get the credit? And this guy coming in and being like, you know what the priority should be on? Saying it at the right time. Rabbi Mani here is a really interesting perspective. A proof is cited based on what was taught in the Mishnah. One who recites Shema after this time loses nothing, and is considered like one who reads the Torah. Just that part, because that's the part from the Mishnah. This is proven by inference, since one who recites Shema, and by the way, they're saying here, okay, fine. Miklal, right, Miklal. Right. This is proven by inference, since one who recites Shema at its appointed time is greater than one who does not, and one who does not is equal to one who reads the Torah. When one recites Shema at its appointed time, he fulfills two mitzvot, that of Torah study and that of the recitation of Shema. So it's a nice recontextualization, because what you've got here, there are these moments when the rabbis of the Talmud remind us that, like, it's a lot of fun talking about this stuff. And it's not that it doesn't matter. It matters to them a great deal. But the detail of the law has to be matched by intention. Prayer is ineffective. We read already, prayer is ineffective when keva, the rote words that we have in our liturgy, those are important. But if they're not matched by kavanah, by intention, by actual genuine feeling, if you do it just because you're supposed to, you didn't do it right. There are people in the world today, there are Jews in the world today who think doing it right is more important than having that intention. And there are Jews in the world today, this one's us, who think that having the right intention is more important than doing it to the letter of the law. Now, the funny thing is, both of us think the other part is important. They think that the kavanah is important. I've never met a chassid who doesn't. Whether they all achieve it or are interested in it primarily is a different question. But we care about doing it right. We do, because we wouldn't. Our synagogue is, our sanctuary is oriented to face Jerusalem. Our liturgy has, while it's not in the same format exactly as traditional liturgy, it includes basically all the parts of traditional liturgy.
So
Mostly.
it, uh,
Yeah.
It's a matter of reinforcing conduct. I recognize that conduct to be in accordance with whatever rabbi is presenting. And you keep using the word credit. Uh,
Credit?
You know, you get credit for this or credit.
Oh,
for
yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Wasn't I hearing the word credit? I'm wondering who's giving the credit.
It's an interesting question. So when I say credit, I am using shorthand a little bit. It's true. I'm whether it's glib, I'm not sure I'd go so far as to condemn myself for. But I would say that when I say credit, I mean fulfilling that particular mitzvot. So when they say, loses nothing, we're talking about credit. We're not talking about like a credit system where you get points or lose points and like you only go somewhere if you get the right number of mitzvah points. That's not what the rabbis are talking about. It's not what I'm talking about either.
That's, yes, that God's sitting up there with a blackboard, giving you a check mark or a minus.
You shouldn't think that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't think that. That's just not the case. Yeah, right. I mean, the truth is, because like, and here's the thing, you all know this because you've all been to High Holy Day services. So you know that it doesn't work that way. God's not sitting up there with a calculator. We can't truly know exactly how theodicy works. We have a lot of ideas about it. We've tried to figure it out. We think you should do mitzvot. We think you should do mitzvot because you want to do mitzvot, because you're motivated to serve God, not because you're afraid you'll be condemned or will be shunned from your community if you don't do mitzvot. That invalidates me. And the rabbis of the Talmud would agree with me. I'm not condemning, I'm not saying anybody today is like that. I could say a couple people, but I'm not gonna. But nobody we know. But it's yeah, I gotta say,
Another way
yeah.
to put it is, there are certain expectations.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so whose expectations are we attempting to meet?
God's.
And how do we know that?
How do we know
Yeah.
God's expectations, or how do we know we're trying to meet God's expectations? We got a book, right? They give us a book. And then God said in that book, it's our job. No, hold on. We got that book, and God said in that book, it's our job to interpret it in every generation to make sure, above all, that Judaism continues to grow to serve its own mission, which is to. How could you? How could human beings be told ahead of time all of human history? The roadmap is a it's a.
So we could easily.
No. The roadmap matters. It's a moral roadmap. It's a values roadmap. That's what keeps the light alive. And that's, and Judaism needs to change in every era so that we can continue to fulfill our mission of being a light unto the nations and bringing one day, hopefully, Mashiach.
We're getting lost in the weeds here.
We are?
We are.
In what way?
In the way we're trying to figure out exactly from each of these rabbis, exactly what the expectations are. Instead of taking an overall approach and saying, you're going to say this prayer. Whenever you say it, it means the same.
Let me be the opposing attorney in court. You have to say that these men were so pious and were so concerned about trying to do what God wants us to do, that's why they're arguing this.
I'm starting a book club in a couple weeks. There's There's an ad for it out in the
I was
bulletin.
gonna ask you when.
And it's in the bulletin. I think we're supposed to do it this month, but I think I think it didn't get in the January, but it's in the February bulletin now.
Okay.
We're going to study God in Search of Man. I think that will be not that I think this is rewarding, and I think there's time and this is a place to talk about important values and also sometimes studying one of our great works. It's not just its values, but its literature, its figures is important in Judaism. So that is important. But I think you'll get a lot out of that particular book since it's much more about the relationship between God, literally between God and human beings, and how God interfaces with human beings in the world. And if you might get more of specifically that content there. I don't mean to, not like it's pushing, but like you might get more of that there than from the Talmud, because here's the thing: Jews of the time said the same thing as you. They said, this is hard to figure out. What do they mean? When are we supposed to say what? That's why Maimonides comes up with the Mishnah Torah, because he says, this is too confusing for most Jews. They're never going to learn anything. They're not going to, they're going to miss it. They're going to see, they won't understand it. They won't know when to do it, and then they won't know what God wants of them.
The rabbis of the time were intermediaries in order to explain to the community.
Still are today.
And
Yeah, still today. That's what we are today. Well, but not intermediaries. We're not talking to God. We are the people who choose to become, again, this is how it works in Judaism. You can call it an intermediary. In another religion, you might. In our religion, it's called the people who study enough to be qualified to interpret the religion. If you want to call that an intermediary, I see why you might want to. I disagree with that interpretation, but it's valid. What I just did. People who are educated enough in the religion to make interpretations on it. There's a system. It's not random. There's a process, and we can and these rabbis are relaying essentially the teachings. You got to remember, these rabbis are relaying the teachings theoretically from Moses to Joshua, to the elders, to the men of the Great Assembly, to the rabbis. So this is all divine in some manner, although playing telephone. Yeah, how did the rabbis do it?
You want to make it easier than hard.
They do want to make it easier. That, believe it or not, there's a principle in here. We're not there yet because the Talmud is massive and we're literally 10 pages in. But the Talmud is thousands of pages and we're 10 pages in. So believe me, it's in there. But there's a whole point that a rabbi's top job is not to place a stumbling block before his community. And what the rabbis mean by that is, don't make following the halakha so difficult on them that they won't want to do it anymore, because we have to keep people in the fold. I know that doesn't sound like a very orthodox perspective from people 2,000 years ago, but that's how they did it. That's how Judaism worked back then. Judaism was agreed upon by the community. What the rabbi could get the community to agree to is what Judaism was, based on what they read in the Talmud and the Torah. And it only changed once law codes started happening. Remember, I always have to remind people, when Maimonides wrote the Mishnah Torah, most rabbis of the time thought he should be excommunicated for writing it down as a code, saying this is the way it's done. I know today they tell you, Orthodox people will tell you, oh, yes, it's always been done this way. But in fact, they used to want to excommunicate people who said there's a way it's always been done. Then a couple hundred years later, everyone became a Maimonidean, and the Ashkenazim also wrote the Shulchan Aruch and made a code of their own. But just remember, it's always been done in different ways. And rabbis are seeking to get people to live in accordance with what God wants. That's the simplest way I can state it. We're not intermediaries, I don't think, because you too can be educated. It's not a caste system. My birth wasn't special. There's no rabbis in my family. I have no yichus. It sounds like I might because of my last name. I'm not related to the guy who wrote the blue Torah commentary that we have. What's his name? Chaim Stern. But I could become a rabbi because I learned. You could too today. Well, it takes a couple years, but you could start today. And you could become a rabbi, and then you'd be qualified to interpret. It's not locked down, but you do have to get it. You can't just. It's hard to just be a random person. To be fair, a random Yid who learned a lot, a random Jew who learned a lot, could write something up, and if the same way anyone could, if it was good, you could probably get it published somewhere. But like, most people aren't going to do that. That's not really, that's kind of in the hands of the elite, right? That's in the hand of the people who care enough about it to write about it. That's these guys too in the Talmud. They're the ones who care enough to talk and write about it.
In New York this week, I'll look into it.
Okay. You stopping by the Ohel? No, just gonna go visit the Rebbe. Oh, wonderful. Where?
Going
To Brooklyn.
with regard to religion, it's the bat mitzvah, and to see the show Wicked.
Oh, nice. Where's the bat mitzvah?
It's in New York.
No, the synagogue.
Yeah. They live near, I don't know the exact
Oh.
name of the synagogue. It's near 76th and Park Avenue, I think.
I wonder if it's because Park is on the east side.
Yeah.
Darn. I know that on the west side on 60 something, 68th, I think, is Stephen Wise Free Synagogue. Anyway, never mind. Now we're getting into a really specific New York conversation, so we'll base ourselves off of that. Sorry, internet. That's really specific.
I want to go back.
Please, please take us back to the Talmud. Yeah.
Is it the right time, or is it with kavanah? A sentence of Heschel's that has always stayed with me is, synagogue is the place where prayer goes to die. I think what we meant by that is synagogue, if you're only a spectator in the pew, instead of praying the words yourself with kavanah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and the problem is, the reason he said that is because so often, it's why actually it's so good here that we develop, and I'm always looking for more if anyone here, hint, hint, is looking to take on prayer leadership, but it's why it's so nice to have not just me up there. And it's not just nice for me, right? It's not just nice because I get a night off and I don't have to write a sermon. It's nice because someone else whose time isn't usually spent on this comes in and looks at the service differently. Not crazy differently, but maybe they say, I've always been fascinated by this reading and the rabbi never does it. Or I've always wanted to do this extra song in Kabbalat Shabbat and the rabbi never does it. They can do it. They can bring something new that is not something I do, and it allows us to have something. It makes it fresh. It makes it not a performance. And that's what Heschel is talking about when he says prayer goes to the synagogue to die, is that if we don't want to do things always exactly the same way. And I try and bring different things, but also we have certain things we're supposed to do. Certain weeks we're supposed to do the anniversary and birthday blessings. Certain weeks we do Torah. Certain weeks I give a sermon. Certain weeks we do this song, and then we do a different one. So it's just like it's all we try and keep it fresh. It's good when you can. Then it feels more like a minyan. It feels more like people coming together to pray in common purpose. Yeah,
And
that's
without
awesome.
What these rabbis really are discussing is a ritual.
Oh yeah.
And the importance of ritual, I suppose.
Oh yeah. The rabbis believe in ritual. Absolutely. Ritual is big with us. That's why the Catholics are the only ones who have it, because they basically just ripped us off. You ever see the Pope? He wears one of these. Cardinals too. But like the rituals are a big part of what we do, even in the still when we do a bar bat mitzvah, when we do Havdalah, like we did last night at our event, when we do any number of rituals, confirmation, consecration, everything is a ritual.
There's a sense of security in a ritual.
Yeah. And and there's a comfort in tradition too. Yeah. Absolutely. The rabbis are big on rituals. They kind of want everything to be ritualized. It's why they invent the Seder. The Seder is a ritual. It's a huge ritual that lasts for hours, but I mean, we like to, second night, I like to keep it short, but like first night, it goes for like 3-4 hours. It's a long Seder. And I don't even go as long, some of them will go like 8-9 hours because they really want to do the thing where they get to like daybreak. There are some people who will like go that far because like the rabbis in the story, they want to make it till the light comes up, so their students have to be like, "Oh, you stayed up all night talking about the dark." Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
So we're discussing what the ritual should be.
Okay.
Is that basically it?
For this, yeah. We're discussing how the ritual should be performed. In this case, when you get up, you're trying to say to God that
That's the debate. What
how you should do it to best serve God, right? What God wants, right? What does God want us to do?
expected by God.
Right, yeah. How does God want us to say Shema in the morning? They're pretty sure God wants us to say Shema in the morning and in the evening.
So how
They just
do
want to know how.
guys come up with their arguments?
The idea is that-
Are they claiming that God is giving them direction?
Kind of. Sorry for anyone on the internet. You're going to miss all of it. Oh, maybe not. There's a thing over
They're
there.
trying to
See,
back
quiet.
it up with scripture.
Whoa.
It's very imaginative.
Yeah. Something tells me I'm going to ruin this. Okay. Well, this is.
Oh, okay.
I'm just looking for you to give me the basics.
I get it, but here's the thing. So we got this guy, Moshe.
Moshe.
He gets the tablets, right?
Yeah.
Tablets. Tablets. He gets the tablets, but he also gets something else.
What else?
He gets oral Torah. God goes, now let me tell you how all of these rules in the written Torah are supposed to be performed. But don't write it down. This is just for the leaders to know. So if they come and ask you, you'll have some answers and you won't all have to figure everything out all at once. So you can't tell a lot of people, but you can tell your guy. Joshua. He's your deputy. You can tell him. Now, Joshua, you become the Moshe after Moshe. So what happens to you? You can tell. We don't have another Moshe leader, prophet after Joshua. You can tell we're going to call them the elders of Israel. So who are these? These are men. Rich and powerful leaders of clans. This is who we're talking about. And they're supposed to get the knowledge. Now, what do you think happens once it goes from this guy to these guys?
Different numbers.
Who's played telephone
No.
when they were a child? Everybody? Okay. Maybe. Do you still play telephone? When you were a kid, did you play?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. I wasn't sure. I barely did, and I was I'm like 20 years old than you. Okay, so what happened is they played telephone. And the messages start to get fragmented. What happens after the elders of Israel? The men of the great assembly, sure, Sanhedrin, whatever you want to call it. These are hundreds of men. We go from one guy to like 12 guys to hundreds, 700 men. And we're not done. Now, the funny thing is, now we're contracting because there's been a lot of hubbub and exile between here and here. You can call them Pharisees if you like to hate on us, but then it goes down to the rabbis. Many of these rabbis are rich and leaders of the Jerusalem and Eretz Yisrael community. Some of them are not rich at all and super poor, but really brilliant. This community of people gets the message. This is what we call the chain of transmission. Now, what happens when a message goes from here all the way out to there and then contracts to here? You get
Operators.
baraitot.
Right, yeah.
You get all of these pieces of what we're calling rabbinic material, these baraitas. I think, is the word baraita on there? I don't know if I think we passed it. It was in the last one. We got no baraitas in here, but the point is, so what you get is a lot of baraitot. You get what's happened from Moshe to the rabbis is that there was a way God told Moshe to do it. And different people heard different versions. And it's the rabbi's job in the Mishnah to say, the rabbis say, this contraction, this is a problem. Because if there's fewer of us than of them, that's not a good pattern. And Judaism can't go out of the world. And this message in particular, the oral Torah, cannot go out of the world. So the rabbis make the fateful and decision to change Judaism forever and do what? Write it down. So they decide to write the Mishnah. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi decides to become he's the project editor. He's the redactor of the Mishnah. And Yehuda Hanassi has to decide what makes it into the Mishnah and what baraitot are out. But it's not that simple, because we're not just reading the Mishnah. What happens 100 years after the Mishnah? More rabbis keep writing because it turns out the rabbis were wrong. What? Their project, which started out as like Rabbi Yossi and his like 4 friends, grew. And these rabbis got students. And now they had to teach this Torah to their students every generation based on what they had in the Mishnah. But they found all this other material, and they themselves, brilliant as they were, had additional thoughts and had been taught by their rabbis things that hadn't made it in to Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi's Mishnah. If your teacher told you this story, and then you read to your students, and you and your students were studying a Mishnah, you might say, well, you know what? It does say this, but my teacher Shmuel taught me, right, what we saw in the last one. Rabbi Havir, or whatever says, Rabbi Ploni says, my teacher Shmuel told me that it's actually like this, based on a baraita. And that's the Gemara. And then you got to wait all the way to Maimonides for somebody to go through and cut through and say, this is the decision, this is the decision. But the Talmud doesn't always do that. That's the answer to
I
your
imagine
question.
there were a lot of commentaries to my mind.
The reason it's this fragmented is because they're trying to put together what one man heard from the voice of God thousands of years before them into a book. And I don't know how one would imagine translating the mind of God into words, let alone a static thing like a book, which is meant to be reproduced exactly forever. But it's got to be adaptable, because we as a people have to be. And it has been adaptable, at least up until now. We'll see if it keeps being adaptable. That'll be up to the rating, I guess. But this is my point.
You go to Israel and you get a new book.
Let me show you the book. Before we go, just stay here for a second. Let me show you the book. Let me show you the new book. I did. I went to Israel and I got a new book. You wait one sec. I'll be right back.
Feel better?
Managed to wake up anyway.
Yeah. And then there's those who want to incorporate the Zohar along with that and try to make it some kind of unity in terms of understanding.
I just kind of kid him with it, you know.
He likes the Chiefs. I think that was useful.
Yeah, this is wonderful too.
And you can understand why we get two rabbis in the room, you can get four opinions.
Take a look at this.
A new
Oh,
book.
And a concise,
Tfilat Adam, the name of it, or man's prayer, or human prayer, comes from a Hannah Senesh poem.
Oh.
Remember Eli Eli?
Mhm.
Tfilat Adam, right.
Yeah.
I pray that these things never end. So what you see in there, I forgot, I didn't bring enough, but if you go through it, you'll see such interesting things. It works very differently from ours. The pages are done the way traditional Sidurim that are bilingual, like a core and Orthodox Siddur might be, where the Hebrew is on one side and the English is on the other, and both sides have the same page number.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah.
You'll also see, which Orthodox Sidurim have and ours now do too, in both Hebrew and English, if you look at the margins, you'll see little blue type. That is the citation in any prayer for where it comes from in scripture. Or any poem. If they got it from the Torah or from the Talmud, they're going to cite it right there on the side, which is a great change because it allows people to see the composition of our prayers. How many of our prayers are made up of series of lines from, sorry, I'm like standing over you.
No.
A series of lines from Psalms or from the Torah. And often our people don't know this because this book doesn't have any citations. All the citations are in the back. There's no citation. I don't know where any of this comes from. Well, I do, but you won't, and that's a problem. But now you will. Citations everywhere. The transliteration also follows the Israeli and quite frankly, Koran Orthodox standard. So look how they spell a kuf is now a Q instead of a K in transliteration. So when you go through and look at how things are, and a ch, like barhu, I think will be spelled probably KHU instead of CHU. It's a different. It's adopting these things, but obviously it does some things also that are different. There are certain, there's one or two prayers as part of Kabbalat Shabbat I know of that have alternating paragraphs where the name of God is in the masculine or in the feminine. So for those of us who only know prayers with using God's name in the masculine, like me, that would be an adjustment, or we'd have to just fake it. Like we just have to do the way we know and not use the book for that part.
Based on what
Yeah.
is teaching us, opening to page 444. As for me, may my prayer come to you, O Eternal, at a favorable time. Psalm 69.
Yeah,
That's found where?
Psalm 69.
In
So I could go here. I'll go to Sepharia. I'm already in Psalms. Psalm 69. As for me, may my prayer. Here you go. Verse 14. As for me, may my prayer come to you, God, at a
Oh,
favorable
Lord,
moment. Right here. Right.
at a favorable moment.
Right. It's a different translation.
Different translation.
Yes. Our translation is always, the Reformed translation is always going to be egalitarian. It's not going to say Lord anywhere. It might say eternal, sovereign, but it's not gonna say Lord or King, because we don't do that. But it means the same thing. We're talking about, it means God, it's the same, yeah. So, yeah, it should, and on some of the margins, it'll have them, what I mean by the margins is,
I just noticed the difference in,
yeah, that is interesting. I don't even know, this is like a write it yourself prayer thing.
yeah,
I mean, like,
Alliteration on something.
so like, hold it. So like here it says Psalm 176, I'm sorry, 116.
Sometimes, yeah.
And over here it says Tehillim, and it gives you this in Hebrew also, yeah. So that's what I mean by having the citations. Sorry, what was it? There was a question.
so.
Oh, about transliteration.
Yeah.
There isn't always transliteration.
That's right.
Now, this book, the reason we might have a chance at it,
And it's not following it, that,
oh no, because it goes from right to left. Like our book does that too. So this is
no,
the
but
front of the
I
book. Oh, okay.
understand right to left, but, it's not saying it literally, that is,
What is
if you
it?
turn to that psalm again.
What do you mean? It's saying it literally. That's the same thing.
Isn't it interpreting it a little bit different?
No. Here's this, as for me, that says, as for me, may my prayer come to you, O Lord, O Eternal, at a favorable time or moment, because that's what an eight is. Eight means time or moment. It can mean either of those things. Like for every time there's a season, under heaven from Kohelet, it can mean both those things. So it's actually the same. It's It's literally the same. It's not. There's no difference in the interpretation. It's not interpreted. It's just translated. Translation can look different based on how you. I mean, translation is always in itself an interpretation. Is something I should say. You're always making a choice when you translate. But that's all it is it's not different in any way. It's the same as. And by the way, this is what I just read you is a JPS conservative translation from 50 years ago. If I did their translation from a couple of years ago, it would say the same. It would say eternal because they also dropped the Lords and stuff from theirs. So it's just a matter of dating. It's not even, it's not a thing. But anyway, yeah. Anyone have anything else they want to share about the book? I'm so excited. Well, we're gonna have a class on that. I'll come around and grab them. We're gonna have a class, and we'll hopefully, if it goes well and we agree to do a trial, we may end up ordering a bunch more. I have like 20 now, but like we may end up ordering a bunch more and switching to it as a siddur for the synagogue.
Yeah, it would be
So
wonderful if we
hopefully-
buy enough so that some of us can buy one to take home to study.
Well, believe me, if we're buying these for the whole synagogue, I'm going to be soliciting donations to make sure that we can get enough for the synagogue. And if we were to do that, then obviously I would also, we would also give the option for people to buy their own copy and in case people wanted them for home. And this is for Shabbat, but it also has a bunch of things in the back that are just very, and like it has Musaf, which ours doesn't have. Like it brings in some good traditional stuff that isn't in Mishkan Tefillah. And Mishkan Tefillah is 20 years old now. This is its 20th year. It's probably time to start talking about a new Reform Siddur in this country, but we're not there yet, so maybe, and look, it's smaller. It's a smaller footprint. It's a little smaller. It's a little bit, just a little bit. It is a little bit smaller. I like it. Okay, well, thank you.